I just got done reading Frank Herbert's Dune, and it took me a while. There are probably a bunch of you are like, what are you doing, man? That's a classic. You should have read that a long time ago. You've been lazy. Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. You get to them when you get to them, right? But I want to read it because I just saw Dune Part 2, and I was very impressed with Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2. I mean, together, that's a wonderful cinematic achievement. It's originally, I was like, wow, this is taking us back to the good old days of film. But I think maybe it's taking us to the good new days of film. I'm one who tends to look backwards and like things that happened in the past. But there's a lot of cool things ahead of us, too. And from time to time, it's nice when something comes along that grabs me by the shoulders and reminds me, hey, people are still creative and good at things. There are still cool stories to be told. Give it a chance, dude. So this is cool. It was fun to see something kind of forward-looking and different. And so I decided, I'm going to go read the book finally. I'd heard that it gets bogged down in politics and that it's more of a relic of the development of the idea of world building in literature from the mid-20th century than really an achievement in world building. I had heard that after the first book, it falls off a cliff and becomes fairly incoherent. I don't know if that's true. I haven't read any more of the books, but I decided I was going to do it anyway. I'm not going to spoil anything, by the way, as I'm talking about this. And what I found was that the book was pretty good. Some of those criticisms were probably fair, a little politicky, a lot of conversations in meeting rooms, and a lot of time spent inside the head of the characters. Now, it kind of makes sense when you read the book because of the world that they live in and how the mind works in this story. But still, it was a lot. So it created sort of uneven pacing between the time when you're in the mind of people and then action happens really quickly once you get outside the mind of people. And so this is one of those places where I think if somebody asks me, which did you like better, the book or the movie, I'm going to say they need each other. I think overall, the movie couldn't exist without the book, but in terms of sheer enjoyment, yeah, I liked the movies better. That was a more pleasant experience. But I see what the book was going for, and there's some really significant thematic stuff. This is not a dumb sci-fi book. It's really trying to do something. And so I think the movie benefits from the existence of the book because the movie goes real fast. The world building in the book supports the movie, fills in some plot holes. But I think the book benefits from the movie because the movie, you got visuals. The great performances of the actors can tell you about what's going on inside the life of the mind much quicker than Frank Herbert could write it in words. And so it smoothed out the pacing a lot. I think these are two things that really complement each other. And I think this will go down as a celebrated film that will stand the test of time. That took a little longer than I meant for it to, but hey, there are my thoughts on Dune. That was fun. If you do read the book, keep an eye out for Eucharistic themes. Keep an eye out for the themes of prophecy and fulfillment and how those things go together. For those of you who did the Matthew series with me and now have done the Old Testament stuff, there's a lot of things there that will give you a lot to think about. I thought that stuff was excellent. But there's also the theme of strategy, and particularly the idea of a trap and recognizing it and mentally outmaneuvering your opponent. And one of the tragedies is that there's one character who knows a trap is coming, instructs the people close to him that a trap is coming, and is still unable to elude the trap. We're 3.5 minutes into this conversation, and here comes your likewise. Likewise, the theme of a trap being set and the question of can the main character avoid it is central to the book of Nehemiah. Will Nehemiah live up to the ability of Esther and Mordecai to spring a trap that has been set and flip the trap around on their enemies and achieve their goals? Or will Nehemiah come up short, and will the Jewish people stumble at the finish line as they had a chance to get back on their feet but couldn't quite do so? As is the case with Ezra and the book of Esther as well. The bad guys come into focus fairly early on, and we realize that they are going to present significant, multifaceted opposition to the goals of the good guys. And what we see as we're getting here to the end of Nehemiah chapter 4 is that Nehemiah was capable of identifying the trap and every phase of the trap and figuring out how to set the trap off without any damage being done, or to simply outmaneuver the trap to thwart the shot before it ever got fired. And that's what it looks like occurs. I think the key verse in Nehemiah 4 from a narrative perspective is Nehemiah 4:15. Nehemiah's just given his big speech to encourage everybody. He's identified the threat. The Jewish people have rallied and communicated. The trap has been exposed. And after Nehemiah makes all the moves, verse 15, it says, when our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to his own work. All right. The providence of God, the unity of the people, and the shrewdness of the leadership of Nehemiah is more than those laying traps for their destruction are able to overcome. And really, the second half of chapter 4 is all pretty much downhill. It's just logistical. This is what we did. We closed our lines. We established a beacon system with trumpeters so we could let everybody know what was going on, and we developed a plan for how to cycle our people between work and defense. We specialized our military defense units by equipping them with armor that detracted from our ability to build quickly, but it greatly improved our defensive ability. And we made a show of this new defensive presence, and, I mean, this isn't really in there, but implicitly, Sanballat and all the people he was rallying to attack us, they never mustered the courage to do it. They didn't think they could overcome our systems. This Nehemiah guy is good. The situation in chapter 2 and the conversation with the king, that was not a trap. That's a friend. But, I mean, like we've talked about, you got to respect the tiger. When something's that powerful, it's going to have claws. And if you get in its way the wrong way, even if you're pals with the tiger, you might get chewed up. And so that was not a trap, but it was a situation that he could easily mishandle. He navigated it very well. Then as word gets out and people start to get angry about this rebuilding effort, there's an entire cross-country journey. There's a billion opportunities for things to go wrong there, but Nehemiah navigates the whole thing properly. When the resistance ramps up toward the end of Nehemiah chapter 2, Nehemiah knows that that's the time to more or less hand wave it and say, the God of heaven will give us success. We as servants will start rebuilding, but as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it. Boom, that's it. Concise, succinct, this is how the things are. Make your next move if you're going to make your next move. And then chapter 3 is a gigantic building montage. And then when the next round of threats come up, which is insults and a despair campaign in chapter 4, Nehemiah simply publicly prays, "Hear us, O our God, for we're despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Don't cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your own sight, for they've thrown insults in the face of the builders." The plan is, okay, right now the most shrewd thing would be to say they're insults, and we're giving that justice and that vengeance to God. Should he choose to act on it, we defer that to him. But as we move on in chapter 4, we see Nehemiah's adaptivity and shrewdness on display once again. It goes from a cold war to a hot war. Now there's actually weapons involved and plots to attack. And as we just discussed, Nehemiah detects the trap, figures out how to counter the trap, reassures the people that the trap has been well countered, and the building continues. Well, if you're Sanballat, what are you going to do next? There's only so many plays that you have. There's only so many traps that you can lay. And this Nehemiah guy, he must have been really smart to start with, but it can't hurt hanging out with one of the greatest kings in the history of the ancient world day and night and seeing how he handles business. Artaxerxes is the son of Xerxes, is the son of Darius, who was the lance bearer to Cyrus's son Cambyses, who obviously was the son of Cyrus, who is descended from Astyages the Mede. Nehemiah is the recipient of all of that elite level leadership knowledge of all of the generations of Persia just by proxy to Artaxerxes. And my goodness, is he showing out well in the face of pressure. It's one thing to know a trap's coming. It's another thing to know how to counter it and what to do. The character in Dune could see it coming, didn't know how to counter it. It's a tragic story. Nehemiah, my confidence in him keeps building with every passing chapter because he sees all the pitfalls for what they are, all the traps for what they are, and he responds proportionately and shrewdly, doesn't let it bog him down unless it needs to bog him down, but even then, he has a plan and he's right back to work. He knows what he's there to do. The sideways energy isn't taking over, and you don't seem to be able to surprise him and defeat him. But we're not out of the woods yet. A whole new problem of really a very different nature is going to rear its head in Nehemiah chapter 5, and Nehemiah's leadership is going to be put to the test in a new way yet again. Finally, and you know this is not how we do things very often. Normally, if I watch a show or something, I got some dumb disclaimer on here to cover my butt. I'm like, don't watch it. If you're a kid and you listen to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, don't watch any shows ever. Don't tell your parents it was my idea. Shows are bad. Don't watch anything. I'm sorry. I just don't want to get in a fight with you about like movies, dumb TV shows or whatever. I just want to get along. You're smart. You can just watch whatever makes sense for you, and that'll be cool. It's very rare that I give you an actual recommendation. Behold, this is an actual recommendation. If you didn't go watch the first Dune, pull it up on some sort of streaming service. Get your very, very best setup. Don't watch it on a phone, and go watch it attentively. And if you're like, it's dragging a little bit, I'm not sure where this is going, well, just know it doesn't end. It's the first half of the novel Dune. And then go find the biggest, nicest, reclineriest seated theater that you can find in your community and go watch Dune 2 while it is still in theaters, because it is a cinematic achievement. And I think you're going to be able to follow with the story, and I think you will enjoy it. The hype is real. And if you don't like it, I admit I will be surprised by that, but you are more than welcome to yell at me. Just make it a little bit playful, like playfully yell at me. And it can be a lot of yelling. Okay, that's all I got. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.